something going on that shouldn't have happened, and we appreciate them working. A lot of people want to see it, the reclassification, because it leads to tremendous amounts of research that can't be done unless you reclassify. So we are looking at that very strongly. Nobody's seen anything like it. Actually, since
So right now, marijuana is on Schedule 1 under the Controlled Substances Act, which means that making it, selling it, even possessing it is illegal under that statute, except for research purposes. What the president is proposing to do, and actually what the DEA and the FDA proposed to do under the Biden administration, is move marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Schedule 3 drugs are still regulated under the Controlled Substances Act, but they're regulated less strictly. You can actually make, grow, and sell Schedule 3 drugs. Ketamine is an example of a Schedule 3 drug. So this really wouldn't shrink the gap between state and federal law that much. And there are really two reasons for that. One is that under this Controlled Substances Act, which is where rescheduling fits in, you're only allowed to produce and sell controlled substances for medical purposes. So for those states that have gone a step further, and that's about half the states right now, they sell this for any use among adults, not just medical uses. The federal government still wouldn't allow that. Even if you reschedule marijuana, even if you move it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, it still wouldn't be an approved drug under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And so it would remain unlawful for anyone to sell this, even for medical purposes, under that second federal statute. There's also one practical benefit that would come from this, and that's that this would be a big tax break for those companies that are now growing and selling marijuana pursuant to state law. Right now, because marijuana is a Schedule 1 controlled substance, those companies are subject to a weird provision of the federal tax code. It's called Section 280E. And it basically says if you're selling a Schedule 1 controlled substance, you're not allowed to make a bunch of deductions when you calculate your federal tax liability. That provision would automatically go away if marijuana were moved to Schedule 3, because Section 280E only applies to Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 controlled substances. But until you make it truly lawful under federal law to make and sell this drug, banks are going to continue to be leery of dealing with companies in this industry. All their money, as long as the sale of marijuana remains illegal, which it would even if it's moved to Schedule 3, because it would be barred under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. So as long as the sale of this drug remains illegal, the proceeds of those sales, they're going to continue to be dirty money. They'll be the proceeds of unlawful activity. Any transaction involving those funds will remain money laundering under federal law, and banks just don't want to touch that dirty money. So this change by itself wouldn't remove that obstacle, and they still might have a tough time getting banking services, still would have a tough time getting registered trademarks with the federal government. They're still going to face a lot of business hassles that won't go away simply because this has been rescheduled.
Thank you. All right. How's the Joker? That was great. That's amazing.
appreciate this one more. Yeah.
The public has made their minds up with respect to whether cannabis ought to be legal quite some time ago. The public polling has been overwhelming on this issue now for well over a decade. About 9 in 10 Americans say cannabis ought to be available as a medicine. About 7 in 10 Americans say it ought to be legal for anyone over the age of 21. The question Americans have been asking now for years is why their lawmakers, particularly federal lawmakers, aren't responding to this overwhelming bipartisan public opinion that says cannabis prohibition has been a failure and that legalizing and regulating cannabis is a much smarter and a much sounder policy than the failed policy of criminalization. The president does not possess the unilateral authority to reclassify cannabis. What the president can do, and what he's hinted at doing, is issuing an executive order directing the requisite agencies within his administration to advance this rescheduling petition forward. So right now, the power to reschedule a substance lies with the Attorney General. So theoretically, Trump could direct Pam Bondi to take the steps necessary to proffer a final rule in the Federal Register that says this administration wishes to follow through with the Biden era guidance and move cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. My presumption is it won't change dramatically in the short term, but over time, banks and credit unions and other financial institutions will become more comfortable with the fact that this industry is here, it's here to stay, and that clearly the federal government itself is also becoming more comfortable with this industry and more accepting of it. It's already been a long road. Again, let's remember, this administrative review was initiated by the Biden administration in 2022. It's now 2025, and my guess is that even if the Trump administration is to take action in the ensuing days, it will still be several months, if not longer, before this issue is finally resolved.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.